Hello again, and thank you for joining us in the Providence College Podcast. I'm Charlie Joyce, your host today. Our producer is Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Our guest today is Dr. Michael O'Connor, Director of the Providence Alliance for Catholic Teachers, or better known as the PACT program at PC. PACT is a 2-year teacher education program in which recent college graduates contribute 2 years of service as teachers in partner Catholic schools in New England while earning a Master of Education degree. Dr. O'Connor has been teaching in the PACT Summer Master's Degree program since 2013. He came to the college full-time in 2017 as Assistant Director of PACT after earning his PhD in Curriculum and Instruction from the Lynch School of Education at Boston College. He also holds master's and bachelor's degrees from the University of Notre Dame and is a former middle school English language arts teacher and instructional coach. Welcome to the Providence College Podcast, Michael.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
You recently welcomed a new cohort of teachers. How many are in this group? And give us an idea of the program structure and schedules they will face over the next few years.
Sure, absolutely. So we welcome 12 teachers in our first-year cohorts. They arrived just after Memorial Day. And it's helpful because I can start there and tell you what happened. So right when they get here, we have them move into the apartments, into the dorms here on campus. They're living in D-Trag Hall. So just like the undergrads do, they take up residence here in the summer. And then we go on an orientation retreat. So it's really important for us to start on retreat, an opportunity for them to learn more about the program, to get to know myself as a director and Andrea Cisneros, our assistant director, to build those relationships and to learn more about the PACT program and the mission of the work that we do to serve Catholic schools in the New England area. So we start with that orientation retreat, and then they come back, and they actually spend a week out in their schools. So they're observing classes, they're getting to know the students, the communities, their principals, their fellow faculty members, and they're also gathering all their teaching materials because then when they come back, right, we don't want them just doing theoretical planning or, hypothetical exercises. I mean, those are important, but we want them to actually be doing real planning for the fall ahead. Looking back, our teachers always say that that's a very helpful thing to be doing, right? That it's actually doing practice for the planning that'll be coming in the fall, and our principals love it too, right? Because that way they know that the teachers are getting ready for their first year of teaching. So then we have intensive master's courses throughout the summer here at Providence College. And during that time, we also have community building activities because a big part of the program is that our teachers live in intentional communities, depending on where they're placed. So right now, all of our placements except for one are throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we have 6 intentional living communities this coming year throughout Rhode Island and Mass. And then they live with our second-year teachers as well, right? So we have the first-year cohort of 12 and then a second-year cohort of 15, so 27 teachers total in the program. One, interestingly enough, is a Dominican down in New York City. So he lives with his, in the Dominican community down in New York City and teaches at a Catholic high school there in Manhattan. And then the others are placed in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So we have community building opportunities, and then we have regular opportunities for prayer and reflection. We attend Mass together on Wednesdays. And then we have other opportunities to be thinking about how we can be sharing in and growing in prayer as beginning Catholic educators. And those are really the 3 key pillars of our program: the teaching and learning, so actually doing the teaching ourselves or for themselves as Catholic educators, working towards that Master's of Education degree here at PC, community, living in community with one another, and then spirituality, so growing in faith as beginning Catholic educators. For us, that holistic model of teacher education and formation is essential to the process. When you look at teacher retention numbers, unfortunately, a lot of folks just experiencing the challenges of teaching, especially in those first years, that the numbers aren't great, unfortunately, and folks do leave the profession. Folks do leave teaching. So our model is here to say, okay, teaching, yes, it may be challenging those first 2 years, but if you have proper support and if you have a really rigorous academic training and preparation, it's more likely that you're going to stay in the preparation. And most of our teachers, the language that we use is feeling called to teach, a vocation to teaching Catholic education. So we want to nurture that, we want to foster that, we want to encourage folks to pursue that vocation in Catholic education, give them the proper support holistically, and then watch them flourish.
Excellent overview, Michael. Thank you.
Sure.
PACT is a couple of years away from celebrating its 20th anniversary.
That's right.
And last year you celebrated a milestone of sorts in terms of the 300th PACT graduate of the program. What, Michael, is the key to sustaining the numbers, the strength of the program?
Sure, I think it's telling success stories. I think that when people recognize how transformative this program, this experience is for themselves as being Catholic educators, as young people, but then also seeing how transformative it is for our partner Catholic schools and students, you just get people telling the good news of the PACT program. So I can give a few details here. You know, we have several folks, several of our alums who have gone on to be principals, and specifically Catholic school principals, including here in the areas that we serve, right? So Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Bristol, Rhode Island, the principal there is a PACT alum. PACT alums are principal at SMASH, as it's fondly called, St. Mary's Sacred Heart in North Attleboro, St. Mary's School up in Mansfield, Massachusetts. But we have principals across the country. We have a principal of a Catholic school out in Seattle, Washington. So yes, there's the regional impact, which is obviously very important, thinking about our partners, but we're having a much wider impact as well. We also have folks who are feeling, I was talking about vocation before, feeling called to religious life. So we've had 8 alums over the years go into religious life and pursue a religious vocation. And we're very proud of those numbers as well, recognizing that that's a major contribution to the church more broadly. And those numbers actually, so we're part of this consortium, the University Consortium for Catholic Education, the UCCE, and looking at all the programs, we actually have the second highest number of folks entering religious vocations of those 13 programs. So the ACE program out in Notre Dame is the largest program. They have the largest number of vocations, and there's actually been some really interesting journalistic work too, kind of capturing that. But we're second, and so we're very proud of that. You know, when you're thinking about major Catholic colleges and universities for PC and the PACT program to be making those kind of contributions to religious vocations, that's important. That's a really important contribution.
And is it common, Michael, when a student teacher teaches in particular elementary or high school, is it common for them to end up getting a job offer from that particular school? How does that usually go?
Yeah. So it depends. It's up to the principal, right? The principal decides if they want to extend a job offer to the PACT teacher after they complete their 2 years in the program. But a lot of our folks do very well during those 2 years, and so job offers are common. We do recruit nationally, right? So some folks do feel called to return closer to home or perhaps closer to a significant other. But actually, I do have some numbers here. I did some preparation. So in our PACT 17 cohort, they just graduated this past June. We graduated 22. 8 are staying on at PACT partner schools. So 8 of 22, which again, thinking about that regional impact here in Rhode Island and Mass, pretty good. 5 are teaching at other Catholic schools across the country, and 3 to 4 are still TBD. Still kind of finalizing their placements, so we may have even more at Catholic schools, but we're proud of those numbers. PACT 16, so they graduated 2 Junes ago. We graduated 18, a cohort of 18. 7 stayed on at PACT partner schools, with another 4 teaching at other Catholic schools. And then some, again, through discernment, feel called to pursue other opportunities. A few went to public schools. One went actually into campus ministry work internationally in Ireland. So, folks feel called during those 2 years to different things. These are young people, and we recognize that, sometimes they're going to feel called to something other than Catholic education. But our numbers show that a lot of folks do stay on at their partner schools or at Catholic schools somewhere else in the country.
And what do the teachers actually teach at the different levels, elementary and secondary, Michael?
Sure, and this is a good time to talk about. We have a couple different tracks within the program. So our largest track is our secondary track. So these are folks teaching 7th through 12th grade predominantly, and they're working towards a Master's of Education with a secondary focus. And this is a track that's actually coordinated and run by the PACT program, which is pretty unique as a Catholic education program. Some folks are going for initial certification through the state of Rhode Island, so we work closely with the Rhode Island Department of Education, RIDE, and other education programs here at PC because we're reviewed and kind of approved by RIDE. We want to make sure that our folks are meeting the proper criteria to be certified here in the state of Rhode Island. Other folks come to us, they've already done certification through an undergraduate education program, so they're still in our secondary ed program, but not going for that initial certification. And then for some folks who did education as an undergrad, they pursue other education tracks here at PC. So the one we partner with most commonly is the literacy program, the graduate literacy program, which is run by Dr. Beverly Pisano. She's a great partner of the program, and we have anywhere from 2 to 5. Actually, this last cohort that we graduated, the number was actually closer to 10. It's like 8 to 10 graduating from that degree program. Most of the time, those are folks teaching at the elementary level, since we do, like, our track through PACT is secondary. But this way, right, we can be partnering with elementary schools throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and they're going on for further study in literacy, which is essential, especially when you're thinking about those early elementary grades.
You referenced earlier, and I think one of the unique features of the program is the fact that the teachers live in community. What is that experience like, and what is the actual intent of that, Michael, especially in regards to the PACT program?
Sure. So I was talking about teacher retention before, but also about holistic formation, and I think the purpose of community is both and of those things, right? So again, we recognize that teaching, especially in those first years, can be challenging, and to have folks for them to have the opportunity to live with other people going through that experience is really helpful, right? It allows them to process what's happening, sometimes commiserating together, right? But essentially, folks to be able to celebrate the joys with, but also to just talk through and process the challenges. It's not something that you're just going through alone. It's not an isolating experience, an isolated experience. It's something that you're doing in relationship with others. And that's a very Catholic thing too, right? To be in community, to be in relationship with one another. So it's a real hallmark of the program. We do a lot here during the summer, like I was saying, around community building, because we know that living with other folks can be difficult. Again, it also has its joys, it also has its challenges. So we talk about things like conflict resolution and communication and setting expectations and being transparent about what you're hoping for through this program. And at the end of the summer, they draft a community covenant, and essentially what that is, after a lot of conversation and input from ourselves as PACT staff and other guests who come into our sessions, including PACT alums, they say, who do we want to be as a community? So yes, obviously there are certain things that we ask for, that we may even require as part of the program, but we really want each community to say, who are we, right? Where are we at in our faith lives? Where are we at in our faith lives? Where are we at in kind of discerning our vocation as Catholic educators? And what do we need collectively and individually in order to have a supportive, mutually beneficial experience in the PACT program? So we lead them through that process. We found that folks, even though they're 22, 23, 24, they're ready for those conversations. They want to have real conversations with one another, and they say, this is who we want to be. And oftentimes when we allow them to have a little more agency in the process, it becomes a much more authentic, intentional living experience, as opposed to us just saying, hey, you have to do this, right? You have to be eating together 5 days a week. You have to be praying, however, right? Like, no, we want them to be able to have agency in that process, and it's something that they really care about individually and collectively.
And the teachers move off campus, I believe, during the academic year. Is that right? What are the community numbers like there in terms of groupings, and what kind of housing does the college provide?
Sure. So our communities range in size from 3 to 6. We think that that's a nice sweet spot, nothing too large, but also 3 is a good minimum number of folks living together. We actually mainly partner with parishes or at the diocesan level, and we're mainly repurposing former rectories or convents throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts, which is, again, kind of a great thing for the local church, recognizing that there are committed Catholic educators in partnership with Providence College who are taking up residence there if, unfortunately, a parish is closed or a rectory or convent is no longer being used by religious. So that's where most of the housing takes place. We have 6 living communities throughout Rhode Island and Mass, right? And so we have one here in Providence. We have one in kind of the New Bedford Fairhaven area, one in Bristol, Rhode Island, one out in kind of Millbury, Worcester area, and then we go as far north as Lowell and Lawrence, actually. So we're up in the Merrimack Valley with 2 communities up there serving Catholic schools. So we cover good ground, but at the same time, no one is farther away than an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we think that that's important too, because as staff, if someone needs support or someone needs a check-in or they're having struggles at school or in their community or even in their personal lives, we can get out to them, right? I think that's a real unique feature too of PACT, is that we're kind of a mid-sized teacher program, but smaller. We're not a huge staff, a huge program, but there's a lot of attention to our teachers. There's a real personal touch, and I know that our teachers believe that they're confident that if something's going on and they need to get in touch with Andrew or myself as PACT staff, that we're going to be there either that same day or the very next day.
I'm not sure if that's unique, but it's very impressive to me. Not only is the focus on education and helping them get their skills and find their way in Catholic teaching, but there are all sorts of backup resources to really close community, the PACT, is it not?
It is. And even though folks are spread out throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts, there are lots of opportunities for them to come together. So we do Saturday sessions for our first years. Our second years come back for some classes. If they're in the literacy program, they're placed closer to campus, usually no more than a half hour, 45 minutes, so that way they can come back for their midweek classes. But then folks are getting together informally as well. They're visiting one another at their communities. We have our mid-year retreat. We're doing that up in Massachusetts. So we all come together in November this year for that experience, and that's a great opportunity to come together for prayer, for reflection, for further fellowship. And folks really value that opportunity to be coming together, again, in both those formal and informal ways to continue to build that sense of community more broadly in the PACT program.
Let's talk about you. You've got a very multifaceted position from what I can tell. Talk about your responsibilities, I should say, as director, and perhaps what you enjoy the most.
Sure. So many hats. So I direct and coordinate our master's program, right? The master's, the PACT secondary master's track. I teach master's level courses in that course sequence, which I love. I love being able to actually teach the master's courses. I teach our Introduction to Teaching course, which is the first course that our teachers in the first cohort have each summer, and then a Foundations of Education course, which looks very carefully at issues not directly related to teaching and learning, but are very much connected. So, when we talk about teaching and learning, we're not always thinking about how politics and race and culture and socioeconomic status and language and all these things inform what happens. But they're all very much related to what the lives of teachers, the lives of students, and what happens in the classroom. So I love teaching that Foundations course. Let's see, beyond the master's coursework, then we do supervision and coaching for our teachers. So we're out in the fall and spring. A lot of the times we're actually at our partner schools. We're observing our teachers. We're meeting with them to talk about how their teaching is going. We meet with their principals. We meet with other folks on their staff, department chairs, their mentor teachers, et cetera, because again, this is part of that holistic formation and support. So obviously we're doing a lot, but we recognize that in the day-to-day out at their schools, their school-based staff, right, are essentially seeing them more frequently and providing that more regular support. So we want to check in with them and say, what are you seeing? How can we provide support based on what you're seeing in supporting these beginning Catholic educators? We do community visits. So I mentioned our communities throughout Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We go out, we have dinner with them. We'll share in some prayer and reflection with our teachers. So there are those opportunities as well. And then a lot of the work is just going to kind of keeping this going. So we do a lot of recruiting each fall. Right, so we do recruiting at typically a lot of Catholic colleges and universities, since we're a program committed to Catholic education. But we're going more broadly. We recognize that there are people who feel called to teach not just in Catholic colleges and universities. So we're really trying to broaden our horizons and rethink how we're doing recruiting to bring in a larger number of folks into this vocation, into this work. And then once we actually recruit them, then we walk them through our application process. And a key thing of the application process is the placement process. So when you apply to PACT, yes, you can get into PACT, but you have to be placed at a school. So if you interview and get accepted by us, then you have to interview with individual schools. And not all of the UCC programs do that. Some programs just place teachers and, it's kind of their decision. For us, we think it's really important for both the teacher and the principal to say, yes, I want this person, or yes, I want to be at that school. When you have two folks saying yes like that, it gets everything off to a great start.
Excellent. One area of expertise, and I think enjoyment for you, is writing. Now, last year you co-authored your first book.
Correct, yeah.
With Andrew Hargraves of Boston College. It's called Collaborative Professionalism, When Teaching Together Means Learning for All. Tell us about the book and what it was like to write that.
Sure. It was a great experience. So this work actually emerged from one project in particular that I was working on with Andy Hargraves and others, including Dennis Shirley at Boston College. And this was my dissertation work. So we were working with a network of rural schools in the Pacific Northwest and supporting them more broadly and thinking about how they were collaborating with one another because these were teachers from pretty remote rural areas who didn't have the opportunity to collaborate with other educators. So we were facilitating their collaborative process through a network. And they were also really attentive to student engagement. So thinking about how they could do a better job engaging their students through their lessons and actually creating a sense of attachment to the rural communities, right? So not something where they just feel like they want to get out of their rural community, but how can you see yourself as a true member of that community and learning from that experience? So from that work and that was called the Northwest Rise Project, the Northwest Rise Network, in partnership with Education Northwest. We used that as a foundational case, and then we traveled internationally looking at other key models of collaboration in education. So myself, I went down to Colombia, down in South America, to look at a network down there. Andy and I traveled together to Scotland, though ultimately Scotland didn't make the book. We're hoping to feature them in another way. We went up to Ontario in Canada. They do some really interesting work there with professional learning communities, PLCs, and especially thinking about how they're serving their Indigenous students and communities. And then I'm thinking where else. Andy, so we didn't always go to the same locations. Andy also went to Hong Kong and to, and to Norway, which was a great opportunity. So we kind of drew from all these different experiences, saw what we learned, and put together this book basically saying, it's not enough to just put teachers in the same room and expect magic to happen, right? To expect that they're going to feel more empowered and then to be doing the really tough work of, thinking more deeply about teaching and learning. You have to have some of these key characteristics and also recognize that where you are, their context, the culture of the place, the sense of community, all those factors really matter. So we recognize that things, right, like you have to make sure that when you're collaborating, teachers feel that what they're working on is relevant, right? It's directly relevant to what they're trying to teach or what they're being tasked to do. If possible, it needs to be embedded, or at least just feeling like it's worth the effort. Too often, we kind of tack on collaboration or something around educational reform as, do it after school, take an extra hour or two out of your time, and then teachers just feel like it's being imposed on them and like there's no real connection. So by giving teachers a better sense of agency in these collaborative practices, we saw some really impressive collaborative models that were improving their own sense of who they could be as teachers and their own work as teachers, but then especially what was happening in their classrooms and with their students, and seeing lots of improvements in student learning and student engagement.
What a relevant and interesting topic, Michael, really, And you've obviously written extensively, book chapters, papers, journal articles. You've got several manuscripts in progress. You also do a lot of presentations. You're affiliated with several professional organizations, and you are currently the inaugural Coyle Research Fellow at the University of Notre Dame Center for Literacy Education. Talk about your love for learning and how that may have developed.
Sure. A few things about the presentations. I think writing the book was fantastic, and to be able to do the research was just an incredible opportunity to work with Andy and to visit those global locations and work with teachers really directly and kind of with them, right? So not merely for them or at them, but with them, working with them. And then to be able to go out and talk about that with other educators has been very powerful. So that's mainly through the presentation work, right? So this past year, I did a 3-part professional learning with all the Catholic school principals in the state of Rhode Island. So that was an excellent opportunity to actually talk to the principals. This was at the invitation of the superintendent, Dan Ferris, of the Catholic schools here in the Diocese of Providence. And again, to work with them, because I think the key thing is you can't come into, whether it's a group of principals or a group of educators, and say, here's the one thing you have to do, and then it's going to solve all your problems, right? That's far too arrogant, and misses the complexity of education. But to work with a group of principals to talk about the value of collaboration, how they're already doing collaboration, and how they might try to make some modifications to their practices to then bring about just a better culture in their schools where teachers want to be collaborating to improve their teaching practice and the learning of the students. Just walking through that process was something really special. So that was great work in this past year. And then, with the different conferences and presentations, it's working with different groups. So I was a keynote up in Massachusetts with a group of teacher educators called PACT from all the colleges and universities in Massachusetts. So thinking about what this means at the teacher education level, and we're even incorporating this into PACT, thinking about how collaboration is a key feature as we're preparing beginning teachers, right? So how do we talk about that in our classes? And then the Notre Dame opportunity, that's been a fantastic one as well. So Dr. Ernest Morel is the director out there, and I'm part of, it's a cohort of these inaugural fellows, other folks who are doing great research in literacy and oftentimes at the intersection of other areas, as I am with collaboration. And to be able to bounce ideas off of them and to support one another, some of the work is getting out existing writing, so writing from our dissertations or other projects, but then to have someone to brainstorm with as we're designing new research projects is really helpful. And in reality, my job is a lot of being out at schools schools, or just wearing the administrative hat and taking care of the master's program. And so having the Coyle Fellowship is really special to me because it means that I have some time, some funds actually as well, and then really that opportunity to be in dialogue with others, with Dr. Morell, Ernest Morell, and the other Coyle Fellows to say, okay, research is still central to who I am as an educator, as a teacher educator. How can I keep this going even in a job which, though it's very fulfilling, requires me to be in a lot of different places doing a lot of different things and not always wearing that research hat.
Congratulations on that appointment. It's what, a 2-year appointment?
2-year appointment, and then thankfully there's the opportunity to kind of stay affiliated with the center. Perhaps not as much with some of the funding, but it's still nice to be able to have that affiliation and the connection to the center going forward.
Michael, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Brother Patrick Carey, who was the pulse of PACT for so long. He was the director for approximately 15 years and retired last year. You worked with Brother Carey, Brother Patrick, I should say, very closely for several years, and you established an award in his honor last year. Can you tell us more about the award and his impact on you and the program?
Sure, absolutely. So Brother Pat wasn't here at the very start of PACT, but came on board very shortly after that. And as you said, I mean, when people think of PACT, they think of Brother Pat. So for me, there was a need to remember that and to celebrate that and to have Brother Pat still be a part of PACT going forward, even though he was returning to Australia. So, I spoke with Dean Brian McCadden at the time and said, I think we need to create an award. In some ways, it's an opportunity to recognize so many of our valuable partners in Catholic education, but more importantly, right, to remember Brother Pat, all the good work that he did, and really he founded and created so many of these partnerships. Right, PACT would not be what it is today if we didn't have so many strong partnerships with our partner schools, with the diocesan partners, and Brother Pat was just foundational all that work. So I'll read it off. So it's the Brother Patrick Carey Award in Catholic Education, and the text of it reads, to be awarded annually to a Catholic educator and PACT partner who, like Brother Patrick Carey, has dedicated their life's work to supporting the development and formation of beginning Catholic educators. So we commemorated the award last June, right before Brother Pat retired and returned to Australia. And this June, at our graduation, we awarded it. It was the first awarding, and we presented it to Dr. George Milo of the Diocese of Fall River, who was the superintendent for a good number of years. He was principal at Bishop Fian. He's principal of another Catholic school right now. And his involvement with PACT at the get-go was essential, right? Because so much of this work is finding schools who will partner with us and who are open to welcoming beginning Catholic educators. And some folks see that as a risk, right? Bringing on new educators. But George, recognized that there was a lot of support from the program, from Brother Pat, from Providence College, and welcomed PACT teachers on board into the diocese and into the Catholic schools. And that, again, just really set the foundation for all that was to come in future years.
Michael, you and your assistant director, Andrea Cisneros, and a couple of teachers recently came back from the summer conference of the University Consortium for Catholic Education, UCCE, as you referenced earlier. How long has PC actually been a member of that consortium, and what value does that group have to PACT?
Sure. So we joined the UCCE the same year as our founding, 2001. So that was actually very, very helpful, very important, because as we were getting started, we could connect with other colleges and universities who were starting similar programs to support Catholic education and beginning Catholic educators, and especially the ACE program, right? The Alliance for Catholic Education at Notre Dame, which has been doing this kind of the longest if you're thinking of time, and has just a huge program and a huge impact on Catholic education. And I should say too, so I and Andrea, both of us, are alums of the ACE program. So that's where we got our start in Catholic education through ACE. So we're grateful for that experience. But now, right, we're very happy. I should always say it, we're very happy to be here too, right? We're grateful that that's where we got our start. But to be here at Providence College and at PACT, to work with our partners, to work at Providence College, where we have so many folks here on campus who are so supportive of the program and of our teachers, it's a real gift. It's truly a gift to have that kind of support from our home institution here at PC. But the opportunity to collaborate with other directors through the UCC is another really important opportunity for us. We regularly meet twice a year as directors, and we talk about, again, the joys that we're seeing from our teachers and how we're contributing to Catholic education, but also some of the challenges, because there are challenges as we're supporting beginning teachers, or if we're seeing challenges at some of our schools, and to have other folks to bounce ideas off of is really valuable. And I think it's actually a really critical moment for the UCCE. We as directors are really trying to think about how we can engage in a broader dialogue of Catholic education to, again, tell the good news of what our teachers and alumni are doing to support Catholic education, because it's a really natural kind of pipeline of creating Catholic school leaders as well. I was talking before about how some of our PACT alums are principals, and we are helping to form the next generation of Catholic educators and Catholic school leaders. So we want to have regular dialogue with ourselves as a consortium and as directors, with organizations like NCEA, the National Catholic Educational Association, with the USCCB, the bishops and other folks, right? We recognize that being in dialogue with other really important Catholic organizations in education and beyond is essential for us, because we're doing so much in that work of formation.
You sound very positive, very hopeful, Michael, about Catholic education in America. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because over the course of the last decade, especially in this region of the country,
Sure.
We've seen a number of churches close and parishes consolidated, and some of those who might have schools. What do you feel? Do you feel now that Catholic school education in America is stable or not? And what does the future, do you think, hold for Catholic schools in America?
Oh, it's a good question, and I think it's important to recognize, too, the regional differences and the regional challenges throughout the U.S., and I think you're absolutely right that here in New England, unfortunately, there has been a narrative and just a reality of schools closing or consolidating. And two things about that. So one, I think that Catholic educators and Catholic school leaders here in New England are recognizing the importance of becoming more opening and welcoming, and to invite new communities in, right? So I think back to what people refer to as the heyday of Catholic schools, and even myself growing up in, the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area of Pennsylvania, and my Catholic school was filled with essentially European American folks, right? Folks who kind of were immigrants from Europe, grew up Catholic, and kind of fell into these little niche areas, both parishes and Catholic schools, for their particular ethnic community. So the Irish had this church, the Italian had this church, the Italians had this church, and I'm Irish and Italian myself, right? The Polish had this church, Ukrainian, so on and so forth. And I think that we're recognizing now, especially as we're evolving as a country and as a region, we're becoming much more diverse, right? So it's not just European immigration. We're welcoming folks from across the globe, and obviously too thinking about folks who have been here just as long as European immigrants, but perhaps haven't been historically welcomed into Catholic schools or even the Catholic Church. So I think that we as Catholic educators are trying to do a much better job of being welcoming and inclusive. This is especially thinking about our Latino community, right? I'm thinking about folks who are bilingual, because I think that oftentimes we think about Catholic schools and the resources available to us, and we say, well, can we support bilingual communities? And the answer is, well, yes, we have to. We should be celebrating bilingualism, right? This is a gift. This is an asset. We shouldn't be viewing this as a challenge. So how can we provide training to our Catholic educators who perhaps only know English, and help them see that being bilingual is a gift, right? And to do a better job of welcoming in Spanish-speaking folks and their students and communities, and not just Spanish-speaking, right? I mean, all different languages. So I think that it's that commitment to being more welcoming and inviting. And then one other area too is an inclusion. So thinking about students with diverse or special needs, and thinking about what can be provided in Catholic schools settings, right? So we know that we might not have the same special education resources as public schools, but Catholic schools are doing a really good job of trying to access more funds and trying to provide better trainings to educators, so that way they can serve these students, right? So that, again, it's not just viewed as a challenge, or, oh, well, I don't have the proper background, we don't have the proper resources. Well, no, what can we do? How can we access those resources? How can we be trained better to then welcome more folks into our schools? And you're seeing a lot of that here in the Diocese of Providence and throughout New England, and it's a real sign of hope, I think, for the church and for Catholic schools, especially here in New England.
You're in your second year now as director. Do you have any long-term projects or objectives you'd like to accomplish with PACT?
Sure. That's a great question. So, I mean, one, our teacher education, our teacher preparation formation is our bread and butter, right? That's what we've been doing for so long, and is crucial to our mission as a program. So we will always be in the work of forming and preparing beginning Catholic educators. I do think, though, as we talk to our diocesan partners and our school partners, they do acknowledge the need for broader support in their schools. So, I was mentioning how I did that professional learning, a 3-part series with all the Catholic school principals on collaboration. And we're getting more and more invitations to partner with folks either at the diocesan level or at the school level to help kind of train and support and form their existing teachers, right? The teachers who are already there in the buildings, or new folks who are being hired as Catholic educators but not coming in through PACT. So, we're having conversations about how we can help out with faith formation, right? And potentially partnering with the theology department here at PC and with campus ministry and the chaplain's office to create meaningful faith formation opportunities for Catholic educators, at our partner schools and with our diocesan partners. We're thinking again about that cultural piece. So how can we be more culturally responsive? And yes, we're doing a lot of that and always adding more in the PACT program, but how can we go out to our schools or be more welcoming of educators there to host opportunities, host sessions that talk more about diversity and equity and justice through a lens of culturally responsive teaching. And that's some work too that we're actually doing with like Dr. Nuria Alonso Garcia here at PC. So we're really trying to think about who do we have here at PC who are experts in these areas, right? And then how can we partner with them to bring that expertise to our partners, right? And create some meaningful change and transformation. And we're very fortunate. PC has some fantastic folks here, and there are folks who are interested in PACT. They want to work with PACT. We're in a new kind of organizational structure, so now we're now reporting to Dean Jennifer Swamberg. And Jennifer has been very supportive of our work as well. And I think it's just so encouraging to see how Providence College recognizes how the PACT program connects so deeply to its Catholic and Dominican mission, right? And doing this work to serve Catholic schools and the Catholic Church more broadly. And so to have that support and to be looking for partners to serve our schools in new and creative ways, it's exciting. It's an exciting time. It's rich and meaningful work, and it's work that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Michael, thanks so much for giving us such an in-depth look at PACT and really Catholic education. And thanks for being our guest today on the podcast.
Of course, thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
And thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us on the Providence College podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast in all the usual places: iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Thanks again to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Charlie Joyce. Until next time.